Hello everyone, I am Fiona Halsey and this is Mark Halsey. Together we started Halsey Legal in 2000 and Licensee Solutions, a compliance firm, a few years later. We've represented many people in ASIC investigations and today we're going to talk about what we've learned while representing clients in ASIC investigations. So Mark, what have you learned?
Well, I think probably the most important thing is that the investigation process is an information gathering process. It's a legal process and it has rules. And as such, the involvement, getting you a lawyer or legal professional involved as soon as possible is probably the smartest thing a licensee or representative can do.
That's true, isn't it?
Mm. Well, like I said, the ASIC investigation, the investigation process, again, a legal process which involves many, many tiers. But it is all about gathering information in order to make a decision as to whether to take enforcement action or not. So it starts probably with some basic inquiries. Often it goes to notices, and I know we've done a number of presentations about notices, which involve production of documents, involve interviews, etc. And ultimately it could involve written questions and written responses. But one of the things that I've learned in terms of investigations, not every investigation, but enough for it to be a concern, is that licensees and representatives do not get their legal professional involved soon enough. And another mistake that they might make is that when they are contacted, again a minority of cases, but when they are contacted by ASIC and it is put to them to have that they would benefit from a friendly chat over a cup of coffee, they do get involved in that sort of process. Now, while ASIC can be friendly, the reality is that they are a regulator and their job is to check compliance with a set of rules and laws, to investigate non-compliance and to investigate whether there has been non-compliance. So the reason that they're having that friendly cup of coffee is to determine whether either the licensee or its representatives or someone that the licensee or its representatives knows has in fact acted inconsistently with the legislation. So the framework, even though it's a friendly framework, it kicks off a set of problems. The involvement of a legal professional representing the licensee and or representative is important.
You know something else I've noticed, and that is it's the luck of the drawer who seems to get targeted. So I've noticed that over the years, that sometimes you can have people who have done things which really seem in the big scheme of things to be relatively minor. And sometimes the client, frequently in those circumstances, there's been no financial loss for any client either. Mm-hmm. And yet they can be the target of a serious investigation. Whereas I know of other people who have been practicing as financial advisors, often for many years, and who have caused many clients to lose just serious amounts of money. And for whatever reason, they've never come to the attention of ASIC. And as a result, they've continued in practice and never had any investigation into them at all. Yeah,
it's very interesting. You raised two very important points there. The first one is, and I'll use your words, the fact is that they have not come to ASIC's attention. So investigations usually kick off as a result of that. Many investigations arise from even tip-offs. But the point is, in all of those situations, these people have come to ASIC's attention. It sounds unfortunate, but it's just a fact of life in the sense of people who have been caught up in investigations and have not really done substantial wrongs. So I'll give you the example. We both know friends and other individuals who habitually speed, but have never had a speeding ticket. It's the point you made, it's the luck of the draw. The second thing that's important is that what ASIC investigates or what ASIC enforces is a process. Yes, they will take action when clients have lost money and people have suffered, etc. But the initial thing that ASIC look at and the thing that they are a regulator that is meant to enforce the terms of the Corporations Act. Corporations Act, the ASIC Act, are principles-based legislation, but then ASIC produces information sheets, regulatory guides, etc., which are very, very detailed documents which spell out ASIC's view as to how the law should be enforced and what should be done in order to comply with the law. And that's what they investigate. So they investigate a process. A lot of people get confused about that. They sort of say, well, look, no clients have complained, no clients have lost any money, but yet I've got a fully blown ASIC investigation. Yes, because ASIC are investigating non-compliance with a set of rules that have been derived from principles-based legislation. And those rules, for example, the advice process in Regulatory Guide 175, is the conduct of the licensee, is the conduct of the representative consistent with RG 175? And if not, there's a significant prospect that an investigation will result in administrative or enforcement action.
Actually, that leads to another really interesting point, which is so frequently when you're working on an investigation, ASIC asks for a copy of your compliance manual, your procedures, policies.
Yeah.
And it's at that point that you discover that frequently the AFSL has not ever updated their manual and that the policies and procedures are hopelessly out of date or were never properly customised to start with.
Oh yes, and that usually is the trigger point for problems in an ASIC investigation. So it's a given that a licensee will have put together policies and procedures which are acceptable to ASIC. If they weren't, they wouldn't have been issued a license. So that's the starting point. Those policies and procedures were, maybe not still, but certainly were in the past enough to be compliant in order to get a license. Now, where a significant number of licensees involved in investigations veer off and face problems is that those policies and procedures are not adequately updated, or conversely, the licensee's policies and procedures over a period of time have veered away from the commitments they gave ASIC, because those policies and procedures actually derive from the licensing process. A Form FS01, Financial Services Form 01, is the application for the AFSL. Certain commitments were questioned and sought by ASIC in the application form, and the applicant, which the licensee now, gave ASIC sufficient comfort with those answers to be able to be issued a license. What's more though, the FS01 contained in their questions timeframes in which those policies and procedures would be reviewed and updated. Again, the licensee agreed to those, signed the application, ASIC accepted it, and issued the license. Now, if the licensee is acting inconsistently with that, you've got two problems. Firstly, they're acting inconsistently with the law, but also equally, they're acting inconsistently with the promises and undertakings they gave ASIC. So that tends to be highly problematic. The other thing we tend to find is that in the case of some licensees, they have, you mentioned the issue of tailoring the policies and procedures. Some licensees buy off-the-shelf documents with very, very high benchmarks. Now, the one thing you've got to realise with that is, are the benchmarks firstly appropriate to the business? And if you have large aspirational benchmarks, are you going to achieve them? Because if you don't, they're your benchmarks. And ASIC will take action against people who have high aspirations, promise great things, and don't deliver. So policies and procedures are very, very important in that context.
The other thing I've seen, which it can be surprising to people, can be that ASIC can request compliance reports, can't it?
Yes, it can. ASIC can either request compliance reports that have been prepared in an environment where there isn't a problem, or they can in fact ask for compliance reports to be prepared. Again, this is where lawyers play a very, very significant role. There is another presentation we've done on legal professional privilege. And the essence of legal professional privilege is that it's correspondence between a lawyer and their client, in this case the licensee or the representative, which is confidential, which is done with a view to getting legal advice or preparing for litigation. And that litigation could be enforcement action by ASIC arising from the investigation. Now, the important thing is where it is protected by legal professional privilege, and it can only be covered by legal professional privilege. If it's done by a practicing lawyer, there's no legal professional privilege attaching to a compliance consultant's reports.
No, that's right. And just writing confidential and it doesn't do the job, does it?
Absolutely not. No. So what tends to happen there is that licensees and their compliance expert, being a lawyer, and or the compliance person put together detailed reports on what the issues are. But if it's not protected by legal professional privilege, that report, which may have cost the licensee thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, can then be either by a client discovered through the court processes or have to be handed over to ASIC via a notice. Whereas if legal professional privilege attached to those documents remain confidential and are not available. It's another, I guess, benefit of an involvement by a lawyer in the process. And ironically, these are things that need to be done before the investigation starts. Legal professional privilege is a claim that's made in relation to a document, but the motive for creating the document occurs much earlier. You can't basically say that the document you have created 2 years ago is now privileged because you've got a problem. It's how that document came into being that's the issue.
That's true. Well, we hope that you found this interesting and helpful today. But I'll just put forward our disclaimer, which is that don't take action or not to take action based on this video today. You need to get your own legal advice. So please get your own legal advice, particularly if you are in a circumstance of an ASIC investigation, which is obviously a very important time. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.